Hello, hello, good afternoon. It's Monica from Life is Art, and this is the Thursday 3:30 p.m. demo at the Wilderness Getaway online crop. And I am just pulling up my video so I can see who's popping on to watch and say hello, hello, hello. So if you're watching right now, you can just say hello or howdy so I know you're here. And if you're watching later, just say replay and then I'll know who's joining me later on. So we are going to be taking a look, if you saw the title before you clicked on the link, that we are talking about slider and SOTM. And if you're wondering what SOTM is, that is Stamp of the Month. So that's what that short form stands for. And the November Stamp of the Month is the Christmas Snowflake Mandalas. And they are really cool. And so we're going to be using some things from that stamp set. We're also going to be looking at the slider thin cut. So let me just take a look here in the catalog so I can show you what I'm talking about. So here we have the slider thin cuts on page 46 in our core catalog, which means it's available all year. And, well, until they run out, but they order more. So it's the slider thin cut. So you get 4 different tracks for your slider. And then you also get the circles for creating the little mechanism. So we're going to take a look at the slider thin cut and the Stamp of the Month. And we're going to be creating a card. And it's kind of a Christmassy card, which is fun. Deborah says, my volume is up full, but I can hardly hear you. Can you hear me now? I'll try to talk a little louder. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hey, Katie, nice to see you're watching. So I'm going to start with my card base, and I'm using a standard size card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 when it's all folded. Comes pre-scored, and I'm going to fold it with the bump side of the score line to the inside. So one side will have a dip, and one side will have a bump, and you always want to put the bump side to the inside, and then crease it down. It always creases the best that way. So Deborah, let me know if your sound is doing a little better. You may have to go out and come back in. You never know. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. And this card is going to be created on the landscape orientation, so horizontal. So I've got my fold at the top, and I'm going to be bringing in pattern paper from the Christmas Story collection. So I'm using this one that's kind of a little bit leafy, a little bit swirly. It's got some nice mink and white dots all over it. And then it's also got some little toffee stars. And I think it kind of looks a bit like evergreens and holly right as, you know, that first snowfall is coming down, because you've got just a little sprinkle of snow coming down there. And so we're going to start out by putting that down on our card base. And just going to add some glue here. Now, you guys are not used to me seeing me use liquid glue all the time, but unfortunately, I have run out of my regular adhesive. And so you get to watch me play with liquid glue. So I'm going to go ahead and line this up with the bottom of my card. Now, generally, I put this down a little bit differently, but because I'm lining it up at the bottom, I'm just going to use my eyeballs. I usually use my fingertips, but today I'm going to use my eyeballs. Okay, let me see. I notice my video is not really doing its thing. So let's see. Hey, Jody, nice to see you're watching. Jody's saying she likes the paper, and I'm just going to pop on there. Okay. All right. Is everybody else having an okay time with the volume? I'm just going to try and talk a little louder. So if it gets too loud, turn it down. And then I also want to bring in some more pattern paper. And this looks like a zip strip because it's a 1/2 inch wide. But this is one of the pattern papers from the collection. The back side is the red with the little white dot, kind of like a Swiss dot, but tinier. And so this front is this gorgeous stripe that's got Harbor and Toffee and French Vanilla and Scarlet. And I'm loving this stripe. It sort of has that very elegant, classic, almost like wrapping paper look to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add this on here. So this is a 1/2 inch by 5.5 inches that I'm adding here. And it's just going to kind of butt up against that first piece of paper that I put down and fill in the gap to the fold there. So I didn't give you the measurement for this bottom part, but it is 3 3/4 inches by 5.5. So that we left that 1/2 inch spot for our nice little piece of pattern paper to go there. Then I'm also adding another strip of that same stripe, but this one has been cut to 1/4 inch. So that's very handy when you want to cut little stripes, to cut them off of a big piece of paper. Because I know I had a 1/2 inch piece and I decided, no, I just want 1/4 inch, and trying to trim it off of 1/4 inch is too finicky for me. So I just got my big piece of paper out again and trimmed off what I needed. And I want to add this at about 1/2 inch up from the bottom, which is awesome. I can use my Versamat, as long as I'm lined up on the Versamat, to line up my little 1/4 inch strip all the way across. And of course I'm using liquid glue so I can kind of play with it for 1/2 second to make sure it's in the spot that I want. And there we go. So we've got that lined up at about 1/2 inch, although it's a little bit high on that side. We'll just kind of massage it into place. And then we need to start looking at the slider. And so here are the thin cuts that create the slider. So here's the slider thin cuts. So we've got sort of a swoop and a zigzag and this sort of swishy one, which I was kind of thinking about using the swishy one, but then I changed my mind. And then we've got the straight one. So we're actually going to go with the straight one for this particular thing, although I think the swooshy one would have worked, but I wasn't feeling as confident. You know, do you ever have those moments where you're not feeling just as confident? So I'm going to take this one and also a piece of the coordinating mink cardstock. And what I want to do is I want to kind of line it up so it lines up with my little strip down there at the bottom. And then I want to make sure that I attach this on here, this thin cut, 1.5 inches up from the bottom of my card. And the reason why I'm saying 1.5 inches is because I'm going to attach one of those mandala snowflakes, and it needs to be able to move and fit inside the card. And the mandala snowflake that I'm using is 3 inches from point to point. And so by process of math, even though I don't math well, that means I need to be 1.5 inches up from the bottom. The center of this slider needs to be 1.5 inches up. So you can see I have not glued down this piece of mink, and then I'm just kind of lining this up so that it's about 1.5 inches up from the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and use some washi tape to hold it in place. Okay? And then I'm going to just shuffle this out of the way and bring my die cut machine up here. And your machine works however your machine works, and my machine works how my machine works. So I'm going to create my little sandwich. I like to put things like this on a diagonal so it's not trying to bow it too much as it runs through the machine. And then I can pull it out. So there's that. And then this is the little piece that has actually been cut out, which is kind of cute. You could use that as like a little popsicle stick or something if you were creating a summertime item. But I'm just going to set it aside for now because I don't need it for this crafting adventure we're on today. And let me bring back in my Versamat. Okay, so then we can remove this carefully from the cardstock. You want to make sure that you use a really low tack washi tape for doing that so that your washi tape does not pull any of your cardstock. And then I'm just going to set aside that slider thin cut. And I want to create a little bit more effect on this to kind of have an idea of that first snowfall of the winter. And so to do that, hey Heather, nice to see you're watching. And Jennifer's here, Michelle's here. I just restarted my video, so now I get to see everybody who's actually commenting. And I haven't been able to see because for some reason that's how Facebook works. Hey Lynn. So if I miss saying hello, just say hi again because I just didn't see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the top here, and I'm actually going to just do some paper tearing. And because our cardstock has white core, and I'm pulling the part that I want to take away towards myself, then I get this nice little edge of white core cardstock showing all the way along. And I had originally cut this piece of mink at 2 inches by 5.5. So I've taken off about 1/4 of an inch all the way along. And that kind of actually makes it a little bit even from top to bottom, but it adds a little bit of sort of that snow drift feel. Now, we're still not sticking this down yet, okay, because we have some things that we need to do. First of which is we need to stamp our snowflake. And the snowflake that I'm using is this medium-sized one. So there's a great big one, there's a little one, and then there's a medium-sized one. And this is the one that is 3 inches from point to point. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp that on White Daisy cardstock. And I'm just going to stamp it with black ink because I'm not doing anything fancy to it. I'm just going to go ahead and stamp it up. And black is one of the coordinating colors in the collection. And so we're just going black and white for this. And make sure I got some good coverage. Just stamp it on there. I probably need to re-ink my black ink. I find every time it gets around to crop again, I need to re-ink my black ink because I use it all the time. Like every project, there's black ink on there. But while we have the ink open, I'm also going to bring in a piece of scarlet cardstock. And this is about 3/4 of an inch by 3.5 inches. And I want to stamp one of the sentiments from the stamp of the month, the SOTM. And that is this one here that says, enjoy the magic of the season. And I thought that was kind of a fitting sentiment because we're going to have our little slider going, and hopefully it will look a little bit special and magical. So we're going to have enjoy the magic of the season. I'm going to bring this a little closer to me and hopefully not stick my head in the camera while I stamp this. Enjoy the magic of the season. We can move that out of the way. And let's add a little bit of a dovetail to this on the right-hand side. So we're going to give it a little snip in the center and then go from the corner to the top of the snip with a nice straight cut. And then from the top corner to the center snip. And there we go. We have our dovetail created. So we can set that aside. And then we need to do some fussy cutting. You guys were all worried about me earlier that what has happened because I did a whole project with no fussy cutting. And so now we're getting it. So I'm just going to go around because this is the stamp of the month. It is not available with a thin cut, but the stamp of the month is usually pretty okay for fussy cutting. So you just take your time and work your way around, and you can see, especially on this stamped image, that I like to pivot my paper and kind of keep my scissors fairly stationary and leave a little bit of halo of the white cardstock around the stamped line. And that allows me to have a little bit of wiggle room in case I get a little close. I'm not going to cut right into the line. And you find as you learn fussy cutting that the more comfortable you get with fussy cutting, the less halo you leave. At least that's what I find. So the more practiced at it you get, and it's something that it's just one of those things, you have to practice it. And you will find that you get better at it over time. Some people have tried it and they're just like, no, not going to do it. But I find it relaxing, especially this, because this is kind of a repetitive kind of fussy cutting, right? You're going, a longer point and then a shorter point, and you just keep working your way all the way around. And when you find that you have too much cardstock dangling over the other side of your scissors, then you just go straight out and trim it off, and then keep going. Now I could get out my metallic gel pens and I could add some color to this, but I think I'm just going to leave it the way it is and maybe add a little bit of bling on it. We'll give it a go here and see what we think when we get it onto the card. So who's ready for snowfall? Are you ready for it? I know some people out west in Canada have had some. My best friend who lives up in Iqaluit, they had a blizzard this past week. So they've had a good chunk of snow blowing into town off of the tundra, which is always super fun because then it buries all their cars and they got a shovel and, all that fun stuff. But it's always that first snowfall. My daughter loves watching Gilmore Girls. And there's the thing about the mom. She always smells snow before the first snowfall. So, yeah. Okay. So the other part on this thin cut are these two little stitched circles right here. And those are what is going to create the mechanism to attach our snowflake through this slot. So what you want to do is you want to take and turn one of them over here like this. And for this, I would recommend using the 3D foam dots because they're already nicely cut into a circle. And I think that that will just slide really well through the mechanism because there's no sharp edges, right? So I'm going to start with the small one, and I'm just going to peel it up here and try to put it approximately in the center of one of my little circles. And then I'm going to remove the backing off of this and come in from behind on my little slider here. Try not to stick it to the cardstock. And so I have it coming from behind, popping up through, okay? So there's my little circle of foam, and then I take my second circle, and I'm going to kind of line it up with the circle underneath, and then we have our piece that will hopefully slide. Sometimes you have to get it going. Hopefully will slide back and forth, and you can see it actually kind of spins as it goes. There we go. Once it kind of gets in the groove, it will go. And that's kind of fun. Now, I don't know, because, I'm doing the cardinal wrong thing today. I'm showing you how to make this without ever having put one together. So you never know. This snowflake may spin as it goes across. So what we want to do now is we want to turn this over to the back side. And we're going to add some foam tape on here to stick it to the card. Actually, I should turn it this way so I can see all the way along the edge. Now, you don't have to do one full strip of foam tape. If you don't want to, you can cut little pieces and go across, but I'm just keeping it simple. You do want to keep in mind that this little circle is here, and it can't be in conflict with whatever foam tape you're putting on there. So I'm using the narrow foam tape, but it's the full height. It's not the thin foam tape. That's always the question. Does thin mean this or this? So thin means that it's not as high, not as much foam, and this is just the narrow roll. You always get a 1/4 of an inch one and a 1/2 inch one. And then I'm going to go ahead, oops, it shifted on me, and add a second row of foam tape above, just like that. And then we can bring our card over. I'm going to line it up on my Versamat so that I have my grid lines to make me keep on the straight and narrow. And we can go ahead and put this. Now, some people like to add things here to add weight. And quite often you hear about people using a penny. In Canada, we don't have pennies anymore. So I'm just leaving it as it is and hoping that it will work. And I'm going to go ahead and line this up at the bottom here and flop it over. So we've lined it up with our little strip of stripy paper. And then I'm also going to add my little banner with my sentiment. Enjoy the magic of the season. And I'm going to make sure that this stays nice and flat. I don't want to add any extra height to what's on my base card because we need that snowflake to travel. So I don't want to pop it up with foam tape in case it wants to snag on anything. And then we need to take our little snowflake. And while I was talking, I was trying to decide if I was going to add any extra things to it. I'm going to leave it plain for now, but I actually might put some of the metallic gel pen on it. So I'm adding some glue to my circle that's hanging out here. And what I want to do is attach this so that none of the points should go down below the edge. So I'm going to have it with my points going straight up and down rather than this way, because this way is actually shorter. So straight up and down, and that should put me right in the center so that these should point straight along the track, and this one should be up from the bottom. And let me just take a little peek underneath to see how we did. Yep, I think we got it fairly close to the middle. And then let's see, is it going to spin? I have a feeling I'm actually slightly off center. There we go. Okay, so it should slide, but whether it spins or not. Oh, it does a little bit of spinning too. Oh my goodness, that's so exciting. It kind of depends on how you do it. If you go too fast, then it slides. And there we go. Look at that. I hope I'm not even holding it in the frame very well. But it does kind of spin around. Look at that. That's so fun. Okay, let's add a little bit of extra to this. Because now that I said it, I want to bring in this little silver gel pen. Let me just test it off on the side, and we'll add a few little bits of silver gel. These are the metallic gel pens that just came out new in that core catalog. So fun. There's a whole bunch of different colors. They come all as a set. And so I'm just going to add some to these little dots here. That's kind of fun. And maybe also to these bigger ones in the center. Now this is just extra, right? Like my 12-year-old daughter says, it's just extra. It's not that we have to, but it's kind of fun that we do. And I might even add more colors. I should get Julia in here to color some of these snowflakes with the metallics, and I think she would have fun with that. All right, so I'm going to stop there because, you know, I could play with that all day. But I also want to add a little bit of bling. Let me see where I put it. I have all sorts of things over here. I've got my silver glitter gems. And let's get out a glitter gem. What do we want? Maybe one of the small ones right in the center. And I'm going to grab my piercing tool for this. Just grab and pop that right in the center like that. And then maybe we'll add, where did I put it? We'll add a couple other ones as well. So let's see, we'll put a couple just right up here along the pattern paper. There we go, just for a little extra bling bling. And so there we go. We've got our Enjoy the Magic of the Season and our snowflake that twirls and slides. How fun is that? And of course, when it's on display, it's just going to sit there like that. But I mean, the fun is when you're taking a look at your card and it does its fun little action. We love that, don't we? And I can't even see anybody's comments right now because they're just not coming up. Yes, a dime might work. It might put too much weight on it. It's hard to say. Sometimes even those little plastic, we call them tiddlywinks, that come with like bingo sets and things like that. They're really thin. That might work too because they're a little bit lighter, because if it's too heavy, it will pull down on the track actually. So we've got our pattern paper from the Christmas Story collection, which is just gorgeous and classic Christmassy colors. And we've layered it up with some of the stripe pattern paper. And then, of course, tearing the edge of our mink cardstock to reveal that white core and kind of have that snowy drift look about it. Then we stamped up the sentiment, one of the sentiments from the stamp of the month, onto our scarlet cardstock. We've got our 3D foam tape and our 3D foam dots to create our fun little mechanism here. We've even added some silver metallic gel pen to the stamped image. And let's see if we can get it to spin. I think it just looks so much more fun when it's spinning as well as sliding. How fun is that? And, of course, a little silver glitter on there. Never hurts. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing how to use the slider thin cuts and the stamp of the month. All right. Have a wonderful afternoon. We will see you at 7 o'clock for Chat and Craft. Toodaloo. Bye.